Here we go. This is night 2, our second training. And tonight we are going to be covering, there's some similar questions to last night's training. So if you missed last night's training, there's a little bit of overlap and there's a few different things. And these questions that I'm going to be answering tonight on this live stream are all things that you emailed me and said, here is why I'm having problems fully implementing play-based learning in my programs. So that's what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to answer some more questions. If you have questions, you can ask them during this. So you can leave a comment. I will see the comments, and then I can then answer your questions if you leave that comment. So feel free to speak up. Feel free to ask questions, because that's what I'm here for tonight. I'm here to help all of you to better fully implement play-based learning into your environments, because we all know that is how children learn best. We know that, right? It's just sometimes the how is where we get hung up. Like, how do we fully implement play-based learning? How can we do that when we're up against so much? Okay, so here we go. First question. How can educators advocate for the benefits of unstructured play and risk-taking in environments where administrators or colleagues may be resistant? So that's something that we're all up against. We are all up against people who really don't understand play. As I said in last night's training, I used to think that play was just something that was fun or a game. And that is really the mentality of many, many, many people. And we need to teach people what play really is. And that can be hard to do when you are a full-time educator and you're trying to teach the children that are in your care and care for the children that are in your care. And then you feel like on top of that, you have to educate other people on the benefits of play. And that's a hard place to be. However, I think that we are all, if you're here tonight, we are all the Lorax of early childhood education. Like, we are here for the children. We speak for the children. And if we don't do it with the knowledge that we have, we're really doing a disservice to the children in our care. So it's up to us to stand up for them and to teach others. Now, the thing is that we can't change other people's minds, right? We can't change other people's minds, and other people are going to be resistant to change, especially if you come at them in a hardcore way, right? So this is like a human psychology thing. If you are going to a person, you're saying it has to be done this way and this is the only right way, they're immediately going to put up a block and they're going to be like, no, I'm not listening to you. So we have to kind of like sneak in. We have to like sneak in the back door, and we have to provide information in kind of a sneaky way, right? So that may be, if you have a bulletin board in the hallway, that may be making your bulletin board into a gigantic documentation panel to say, when the children were in play, this is what they learned. When they were playing with blocks, this is what they learned. And you can like highlight all the things that they were learning and experiencing in physics and cause and effect and problem solving and stacking and sorting and classifying, like all of the things that children learn by playing with blocks or playing with Play-Doh or painting at the easel. You can highlight those things on a big bulletin board. So when I was the director and founder of Butterfly Hill Nature Preschool, I put a bunch of bulletin boards on the board, and I took all of the domains of early learning, and I made each domain, each bulletin board had their own domain. Okay, so one domain was language and literacy, and I would put photos up there of language and literacy, and I would connect them to the Minnesota standards, the early childhood indicators of progress. And I would put the photos on there, and I would put like what standards they were meeting. And I would put other little descriptions of what the children were doing. And so all of the teachers, administrators, whoever were in that space could see those bulletin boards. The parents, the at-home caregivers, they could see those bulletin boards and read them if they wanted to. Then we had another one for like physical development. So fine and gross motor. So I would take photos of children in play and put them on that bulletin board and put descriptors of like what standards are being met in play through those visual photos that I had on the wall. We did that for all of the domains. So creative arts, physical development, social and emotional learning, so people could get a big picture, like a big picture idea of what children were learning in play because of those documentation bulletin boards that I had on the wall. And they still exist there to this day at Butterfly Hill. And I haven't been there for a couple of years, but there is still those documentation boards up on the wall so that other people can see the learning that's happening through play. You can't change somebody's mind again, but you can model. And you can feed them little bits of information over time. So you could do things like, hey, I found this amazing article on risk taking. Like, I love what so-and-so said. I highlighted it here. Leave it on the break room table. Let people see those things. Like, sneakily place those things where teachers hang out when they aren't with students, and they might just pick it up and read it. So with this question, how can we benefit for how can we advocate for the benefits of unstructured play and risk taking? So those are two separate things, right? So unstructured play that's the play where children learn, like the real sticky learning, right? That is where they are discovering the world around them. That is where they are given time to inquire about the world around them, to like see how things work, to problem solve, to play with other children, to engage in associative play and cooperative play with other children, or to engage in parallel play or onlooker play with other children. Those are the stages of play. So they are very much learning all the things in unstructured play. We know that. For risk taking, I think risk taking is one of those things that a lot of people are like, nope, no risk. We can't take any risks. We live in a very like litigious world, right? We live in a world where people like are so happy, and it's very scary. We live in a world where people, I've heard really icky stories about childcare providers getting called by CPS because children are leaving their programs with mud on their clothes. And like, mud is a part of childhood. Like, we need children to be able to play in the mud, and that is a sort of risk for some children who have never played in mud before. So risk taking, a lot of times, I think we need to unpack that a little bit. Risk taking can be, I think we think of risk and we think of like, oh my gosh, like children are going to get hurt. Like if we let them take risks, they're going to get hurt. But there's actually so many benefits to learning to take risks. And I'm more so talking about physical risk here because there's a lot of different types of risks. But I think physical risk is the one where people kind of get a little bit hung up on, right? So Butterfly Hill Nature Preschool, the program that I founded in central Minnesota, allows children to take risks. And risks can be climbing on a damp log with no shoes on, or with shoes on, a slippery log. It can be walking on ice. We live in Minnesota. It can get cold here. It could be walking on ice on the playground. And it being a little bit slippery. Risk can be climbing a tree. Risk can be swinging on a swing. Like a swing is a risk. It really is. So we need to kind of, I think with colleagues, help them understand that there's a difference between a risk and a hazard. And hazards are things that could like severely hurt somebody. And a risk is something that we need to be present for, maybe as the adults in the room, and learn how to best kind of like anticipate what could happen with those risks and work to assess the situation so that it doesn't become a hazard. So there are things that you can do. So if it helps make people feel better for risk taking, there are, like, if you go and you Google risk assessment for childcare or risk assessment for preschool, you might be able to find some sort of form that you can fill out that, like, let's say you want to allow children to climb a tree in your program, because that is a that is a part of childhood, is climbing a tree. And you can then use that form to say, okay, so like if we say yes to a child climbing a tree, here are the ways that we are going to kind of like mitigate any, and I don't know if mitigate is the right word. We are going to anticipate what could happen if a child falls or if a teacher's not there, and what we can do to make sure that those children are able to take those risks in a safe, supported way by the caregivers. And if you fill out these forms, everybody will be on the same page. And so that's something that we did at Butterfly Hill for a little while. We would look at like a risk, something that like the adults outside the room would say, oh, I can't believe you're letting children do that, like climb a tree. And we would say, okay, so if a child is climbing a tree, here's kind of our limits and our boundaries. And we would list them all out. So all of the teachers are on the same page. And we would say, okay, so like they can climb a tree only if a teacher is there. They have to have 3 parts of their body touching the tree at the same time. And they can only climb as high as a teacher can reach. If they climb up, they must be able to climb down. So, and then also with that risk assessment form, it's like before a child climbs the tree, we need to make sure that the area underneath that tree is a safe fall zone. We need to make sure that there's no pokey sticks sticking up in the ground underneath the tree. And so that can be a way that you can advocate for risk taking in early childhood, knowing that there's going to be a lot of adults who are like, nope, we can't do that because that's risky. That's risky and we can't take risks. So here's the interesting thing. I had a nature-based preschool and children could climb trees, but all of the limits and the boundaries that I just stated are all things that we had to adhere to in order for a child to be able to climb a tree. So the teacher had to be present and all those things. So there was one point where we were, when I was developing Butterfly Hill, I kind of wanted to know, like, do we want to do a commercial playground or do we want to do like a more nature-based playground? And so I was doing some research on the differences and the benefits of each one. And I came across some research that said that commercial playgrounds are actually more dangerous, more risky for a child than a nature-based program. So human beings are meant to live in nature. We are meant to be in nature. And so our bodies are built to walk on uneven ground, to balance on logs. Human beings are not built to hang from monkey bars and swings. And so there are much more documented cases of children getting hurt on commercial playgrounds versus being in nature, climbing trees, running on grass, rolling down hills. We had a kiddo who he needed to move to learn, and many children do need to move to learn. I mean, like that is how children learn, is by moving. And this child in particular needed to rotate. He needed his body to spin in order to kind of regulate himself. And so he found that he could fit himself inside a race car tire. We had race car tires in our outdoor classroom. It was a nature preschool, nature playground. We had a lot of loose parts. We had a race car tire. And he found that he could fit better inside a race car tire than a regular tire. And so he pulled the race car tire to the top of a tiny little hill, just a slight little slope. It's not an actual hill. It's just like a slope. And he would get himself inside the race car tire and he would roll himself down the little slope until he hit, well, at first we had a fence, like it was a chain link fence. And we were like, that's kind of dangerous. Let's put some straw bales here. So we stacked up some straw bales against the fence where he was rolling into, because we knew that this is something that he needed for his body to be able to regulate himself. And so we supported him in that. And he would roll down the hill, hit the straw bales, get out, go back to the top of the hill, roll back down the hill, hit the straw bales, go back to the top. He would do it over and over and over and over again. And that's how we mitigated the risk. We like assessed the situation and we're like, okay, this would be in order to say yes to this situation, we need to put some straw bales down here that he can crash into. So there's some actual studies that have been done on commercial playgrounds versus nature preschool playgrounds, like I said, and there's actually higher evidence of injury on commercial playgrounds than nature preschool playgrounds. And so the more natural, the better. Yeah. The more grass, the better. The more mulch, the better. The more sand, the better. Like, if we can get away from some of those commercial structures, I'm going to talk about this in a little bit too. The more creativity we're going to see children have, the more imagination they're going to have, and the more learning that they're going to have. So risk taking has actually been said that it is like, if you don't let children take risks, it's almost like never letting them hold a pencil. Like, it is that detrimental to their development if we like completely bubble wrap children and never allow them to take risks. So we need to advocate for children. And how do we best advocate for them is by just like feeding out little bits of information here and there, leaving articles in the break room on the break room tables that talk about risk taking and the different types of risk taking and why it's so important for early childhood. Okay. If you have any questions, again, please ask them. I can see them and then I can answer them if you have questions moving forward. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say about risk taking. For unstructured play, I just want to kind of touch on that a little bit. So that is where the real sticky learning happens. The learning that where children get into play flow and really start like figuring things out. Like the neurons start really connecting because they're really into one thing or two things or whatever it may be. So the recommended amount of time for unstructured free play, and by recommended, I am saying that lightly because there's actually, that I know of, there's never been a study done about the amount of time a child needs in free play in order to get to that level of really sticky learning play flow. So this information is coming from my conversations with lots of other play-based educators around the world and their experiences. And so we've kind of come to this conclusion that 45 minutes is the bare minimum for unstructured free play. And the reason for that, and this is coming from my experience, is when a child comes into a play-based program and they have access to the whole entire room and everything that's set up within that, all of the learning centers, and I say learning centers like with air quotes because a lot of times we think that centers need to be like this rotational thing where children have to visit all of the centers. That's not the case. We can put centers out, provocations, invitations for learning. We can set them out and let children decide if that's something that they're interested in going to, because that is intrinsic. And that is one of the characteristics of like true free play, is that it needs to be intrinsic to the learner. So we can have all of these areas set out and a child comes in and they window shop right away. And generally the children who maybe only come a few times a week are going to window shop longer, or the younger children are going to window shop longer than the older children or the children who are a little bit developmentally further along, like getting ready to go to kindergarten. So when children come into that space, they're going to want to see all the things that are available to them. So they're going to like hop from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing and like just dabble in each thing. And it might be 30 minutes before they finally settle into one thing that they kind of want to immerse themselves in. So let's say it's dramatic play. We have a bunch of kids playing cheetah and they have to organize themselves within that group of cheetahs. So the kid that came in has already window shopped. They've gone to the easel. They've painted a little bit. They've gone to the sensory table to see what's in the sensory table. They've gone to the manipulative table to see what's there. They've had a conversation with the teacher. They sat and they listened to the teacher read a book on the couch. And then they see their friends playing cheetah. So they wander over there. It's been 30 minutes since they've been there. And then they have to organize themselves within that game of cheetah. So they have to figure out who's going to be the mom cheetah, who's going to be the other mom cheetah, who's going to be the dad cheetah, who's going to be the baby cheetah, who's going to be the dog cheetah. I don't want to be the dog cheetah. There's no such thing as a dog cheetah. Yeah, we can have a dog cheetah. So they have to like have all of these conversations about who's going to do what. And then like they've already been at school for 35 minutes. So in order for that real sticky learning, the space where that play flow happens, we need to extend playtime beyond 30 minutes. It needs to be longer than that. 45 minutes is the bare minimum. However, I'm an advocate for like the magic for me happens after the hour mark. So like the magic is like the whole time after an hour of playtime. At Butterfly Hill, we had good hour and a half, 2 hours before we transitioned to outdoor playtime. And that was indoor playtime. Outdoor playtime, we saw the outdoor classroom as an extension of the indoor classroom. Anything you can do inside, you can do outside. So the learning just switches to be in the outdoor environment. It's a classroom without walls. And we filled the area with lots of loose parts, lots of risk taking, and it was magical. It really was. So I am hopeful that anybody who's watching this can take that away from tonight, is that we need to have unstructured playtime for at least 45 minutes longer if you can. Again, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. I will see them. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is, what are effective methods to get coworkers and assistants on board with child-led teaching practices? This is the biggest hurdle that many people face when they start learning more about play-based learning and they want to implement more play into their spaces and they see that the other people don't understand it. Not everybody can do what I did and say, screw it, and take a risk and open up their own program. Even though I was broke as a joke and I started the program with $0 of my own dollars, like not everybody has the capability to do that. It was a huge risk, but I believed so heavily in play and that our community needed play and nature that I did it. And not everybody can do that, right? So we need to figure out ways that we can get other people on board. And so how can we do that? And I talked about this a little bit last night too, or a lot of it last night. So there's lots of different things you can do. Again, you cannot change somebody's mind. And if you come at people with this is the only right way to do something, they're going to shut down and they're not going to listen, because it's kind of like the fight or flight. It's a stress response. They're going to be like, no, like this is the only way I've ever known it. I have no idea what you're talking about. And so based on human psychology and how people change, is that you can plant seeds. So if you plant seeds, it's going to be much easier to get people to change and get on board than if you were to come at them and say, this is what we need to do. And this is like what research says. And this is the only way that's good. So planting seeds, what does that look like? That looks like, again, leaving an article here and there on the break room table for people to see. It means sharing on your own social media, things from play-based learning advocates that they are creating on social media. Like I create a lot of content about different things about early childhood and play and why it's good and why it's essential. Share things like that from creators who are spending time making that information for you to share. Share those things on your own social media. People will see it. People will go, that makes sense. Oh, I get it now. You can model things. Start in the corner is what Bev Boss always used to say. Bev Boss is like the fairy godmother of play-based learning, of early childhood education. She used to say, start in the corner. So start small. You can start with one little area. Say, hey, I read some things about process-based art, and I would love to implement some more process-based art into our space. What do you think about reserving one table for just putting out a few art materials for children to just create whatever they want with? 1 day a week. Start there. Then say, after they see like the benefits of that, document through that, take photos of them, connect those to the standards, put them up on the board, send newsletters home. The coworkers will see that and they'll be like, oh yeah, that does make sense. Like, oh, I get that. And then say, can we extend it now? And can we do not just Fridays, but can we put it out all week? Can we have a process art table all week next week? Start small and then just like build on that. That is a phenomenal way to start to get people to see the benefits of play. Okay. Okay. Yes, I love that boss. I got to go to her school a few years ago, more than a few years ago, and I got to see Bev Boss's school in it's near Sacramento, California. Oh, so cool. They like bring loads of sand into their indoor classroom like once a year, and fill their whole entire classroom with sand inside. Like, so cool. I often find myself saying, be careful out of habit. What do you suggest as better language when helping kiddos take risks, but also think about being safe while taking those risks? My favorite question is, what's your plan? And then they can tell you what their plan is. So that's my go-to phrase. What's your plan? Funny story about this is when I was teaching forest school, one of the other forest school teachers, we had a kiddo who was on a bridge, and this bridge was over just a small little creek, not deep, not deeper than what the child can handle, not fast flowing, like just a very unthreatening creek. And they positioned their body on the outside of the bridge so that they were like holding onto the outside of the bridge. The drop to the creek is like 2 feet. It was not big. So we like knew that it wasn't a huge risk. So she was like on the outside of the bridge and standing there. One of the teachers like, what's your plan to not fall in? And I will never forget that because it was so funny. What's your plan to not fall in? So what's your plan? Like, that is kind of my go-to question. And I think it works because it gets them to really start to think like, what is my plan? I didn't know I was supposed to have a plan. So it helps them kind of think about like what their next steps are to whatever they're doing. So what's your plan? Or do you feel safe? I'm here if you need me. So those are kind of my go-to ones. Do you feel safe? Great. I'm here if you need me. Let me know. Okay. All right. Hi, Wendy. Yes, you left my Free the Glue book on the table in your staff room today. Whoop, whoop. So I have a Free the Glue book, resource PDF. Wendy came to my play retreat this summer at my home. And so I gave everybody a hard magazine copy of the Free the Glue book. And yay, you put it on the table. It'll be interesting to see, Wendy. Please report back if you see any change because you did that. Wendy was at the training last night, and that was one of the methods that I said is like, put something out on the table in the break room. Monica, I tell kids to be careful, and today I asked the child to put her shoes back on in a sandbox, although I love sand on my bare feet too. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, Monica, do you know if this is an actual rule? Like, is this a licensing rule where children can't have their feet out in the sand? So Butterfly Hill, that is not a childcare licensing regulation in Minnesota. Children don't have to have their shoes on outside. Like, it's not a rule. So we allow children to take their shoes off in the sandbox, but we just make sure, because the outdoor classroom is 1 acre. It's giant. It's all fenced in. When parents come, they don't want to hunt for their kids' shoes. So the children know that if they're going to take their shoes off, they have to take them off and put them up by the door before they go down into the sandbox with their shoes off. So I'd be interested to see, like, where does it say that? Like, where does it say children can't take their shoes off in the sand? Because that is a sensory thing. Like, it is a learning opportunity. It's a risk. It can be a risk, but it's a healthy risk. It's a safe risk. Like, if you are taking the time as an educator to go out to the sandbox and make sure that there's like nothing out there that could harm them, like, you're assessing that risk, and it's a safe risk. So I would say you should double check that. What page is it on? Lisa Murphy would say. Lisa Murphy is like my fairy godmother. She's my early childhood mentor and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And she would say, tell me what page it's on and go from there. Because if like people are coming up with rules about things that like, just because they want to make a rule, they want control over children, like push back a little. Say, where did you see that? What page is that on? It's not mean saying that. It's like really you're like inquiry. It's like inquiry. It's like being curious. Like, I'm curious. Where does it say that? Can you show me? And see what happens. There's so many made up rules in early childhood education. And there's so many stupid rules too that are there for no reason. But that's a whole nother thing with licensing. But there are so many made up rules. When I was teaching in a traditional program, one of the rules was kids couldn't pick up any sticks off the ground. Like you couldn't have, it was like, put the stick down. It's like the stick is like one of the number one imaginative toys. Like it is a loose part. It is gold. You just have to assess the risk there. Like our kind of, at Butterfly Hill, our, how we would, I'm losing my train of thought here. So how we would kind of get around that, like our boundaries, that's the word I'm looking for. Our boundaries and our limits around stick play is that you can pick up a stick. And if it's longer than your arm, you need to like drag it behind you if you're moving it to a different place. And you can't touch other people with your stick. But you can, like, we would let them engage in like sword play with sticks, but you can't touch somebody else with your stick. So you can come up with some of those things and say, show me what page it's on. Yeah. Okay. Yes, Lisa Murphy. Okay, so if you don't know who Lisa Murphy is and you want to learn more about play and you want to learn more about child-centered learning, get Lisa Murphy's books. One is called Lisa Murphy on Play, and one is called Lisa Murphy on Being Child-Centered. They're phenomenal. So, and another person says, when I first started my journey in child-led play, we did a book study with Lisa Murphy's books. Yes, they are gold. More resources that I have loved are Ray Pica's books. What if everybody understood child development, and what if everybody understood the way children learn, or something like that? I think Ray Pica, Raepica. And then also, and I was going to mention these books in the next, I was going to mention these books in this question too. Do a book study. So that's one way that you can like kind of get other staff on board is say, hey, can we do a book study over the next 3 months? I have this book. I think that everybody should read it. It could give us some really great ideas. And some of those books that I were going to mention are the ones by Lisa Murphy that I just mentioned. There's one by Heather Shoemaker called It's Okay Not to Share. That's phenomenal. And I actually, so if there's any people watching this who are program directors, owners, principals, I actually purchased a copy of that book for every staff member in my program. And anybody who would start, I would send them that book in the mail before they start and say, here's a lot of the philosophy, like a lot of the things that we follow. And so I want you to read this so that you kind of know where we're at before you start. It's Okay Not to Share by Heather Shoemaker. And then I think one of the biggest game changer books ever for me was by Jeff Johnson and Danita Dinger. It's called Let Them Play, and Early Learning on Curriculum. Those are phenomenal resources. So offer to host a book club with the people in the staff that are having a hard time being on board. Okay. We're going to go to the next question. All right. How can teachers address concerns from colleagues about noise, mess, and the perception of chaos? Okay. So I think that we need to reframe the word chaos as engagement. Okay. We can explain that things might look like chaos, but it's actually children that are fully immersed in learning, problem solving, social skills. It's children learning how to get along in the world. So if we can reframe the word chaos to engagement, I think that it's going to help people better understand that it's not actually chaos. Like, they are engaged in learning. And sometimes that can be loud. Sometimes that can be messy. Sometimes that can be quiet. Sometimes it can be neat. Like, it's going to be different every day. It's not always going to feel like chaos. I think it's important to share with staff and colleagues, and this can be done through documentation or it can be done through conversation, that sensory-rich environments are essential in early childhood education. And sometimes those sensory-rich environments feel like chaos. It feels like a mess. So a sensory table full of sand, full of water, whatever it may be, full of rice, it will get on the floor and it will look messy. But the sensory part of that is so essential for young children. Okay. I think this is really hard for a lot of adults, and I don't know why. And it's maybe because we didn't play enough in early childhood, is like communicating with other adults, like actually communicate the role of the educator in the classroom. Like, this is, I think that a lot of times and we're going to take preschool, for example, like, people are preschool teachers. I'm a preschool teacher. We put on this teacher costume and we want the same, okay. And this comes with like a little bit of a caveat. So, K-12 teachers from an early childhood perspective, are much more taken care of in our society than early childhood. However, we see in the news and the media that teachers aren't appreciated. However, from our outlook and our viewpoint as early childhood educators, we're like, they're given so much more respect than us early childhood educators. So we put on this teacher costume to say, hey, we're teachers too. We're not just babysitters. And in putting that teacher costume on, that comes with like a watered down version of a kindergarten curriculum. We need to, as play-based advocates, we need to help people take off that teacher costume and understand that they are actually caregivers first. In early childhood education, we need to care for children before learning can happen. We need to make sure that all of their needs are met before learning can happen. And a lot of times, especially in pre-K, TK, transitional kindergarten, preschool, we don't have time to take care of their needs because we are so structured and we're trying to get all the things in, right? We're trying to transition all day long. We're trying to like make their day this mini watered down version of kindergarten so they'll be ready for kindergarten, but we're like doing such a disservice to the children in our care because we're not actually letting them be 3 years old. We're not letting them be 4 years old. We're not letting them be 5 years old. And so we need to kind of strip back that teacher costume and help other people do the same. Like, hey, if we can meet their needs first, learning is going to be so much deeper. So trying to have conversations with colleagues about what is an early childhood educator? What are our main goals here? What's the main role of an early childhood educator? And it looks so different than elementary school teachers. And the problem is there's a lot of like systemic problems too, because we also know that kindergartners and first graders are still so little and they need a lot of care too, but they're getting very much like that teacher role instead of caregiver role for them. So, and then of course you can also show evidence of play to say like, hey, like, yes, this was a mess, but here's what they learned. Yes, this maybe felt like chaos, but they were learning that their voices can get really loud and really quiet. They were learning self-regulation by recognizing that their voice was really loud. Some kids were having a hard time with it. We had to problem solve through that. We had to give them a different place to make their voices loud. But here's what they learned because of that. So if we can point out those things to people, reframe that chaos to engagement, that might help out a little bit. Okay. Chaos equals free thinking, not necessarily a bad thing. And I think any of you who are here tonight who maybe, and I'm not using this as like a cliche thing, who actually have like ADHD or neurodivergent brains, you know that your brain might be chaos, but like you're a multifaceted person and like learning so much when your brain is in that state of chaos, which could be flow. And children are the same, and those environments are kind of the same thing. Yes, Becky, Carol R. Bowden Murray's book, Illuminating Care. Gotta have it. It reframes the like teacher mentality to caregiver mentality and why care is really the foundation of all early childhood education, but that's often forgot about because we want to be teachers. Yes. Yeah. Illuminating Care. It's fantastic. Cool. I love the feedback. Thank you for giving feedback and asking questions. All right, here we go. What strategies can be employed to create a unified approach to play-based learning in environments where different teachers have conflicting philosophies? This is hard. Okay, I want to show you my blinking water. This is a little, if you don't have these and you're a classroom teacher or you have a program, these are, I just got them from Amazon today. This is a heart-shaped ice cube that is water activated. So you can't get in, there's no battery. So they're perfect for even toddlers. Throw them in the sensory table and they light up and they're activated by water. So when they dry off, let's see if I can get it to shut off. When they dry off, they don't light up anymore. See, I dried it off. Doesn't light up anymore. So the batteries last a really long time. Then you pop it in water and it blinks. Isn't that cool? Yeah. So one of my like new favorite water table fillers. Okay. Here's the interesting thing that I've been kind of pondering for the last year as I've been out into the world, speaking with lots of different programs around the world. And one of the things that I am finding very interesting, it's a lot easier to implement play in programs that have a very solid philosophy. This is who we are and this is who we aren't. Public schools do not have a philosophy. They don't. And so if you are working in a public school, there are some charter schools that have philosophies like that are, like a sect underneath a governmental agency. But for the most part, if you are working in a traditional space, every teacher is kind of left up to their own philosophies. You go into any classroom and teachers are running them differently. They may have to follow the same curriculum, but they are running things very differently. They may be very into conscious discipline, or they may be very into punishments and rewards. They may be very into play. They may be very into teacher-directed activities. And that is kind of the downfall of, I think, in my opinion, and your opinion may be different, that is one of the like drawbacks of teaching in a public school is that everybody's going to have very different philosophies, and it's very difficult to get everybody on the same page because they all come from different backgrounds. They all come from different communities, different cultures, different experiences, different biases. So it's so difficult if you're in one of those traditional spaces to fully implement something because there's so many differing philosophies. That is what is so cool about a lot of like private early childhood programs is they can start, like I started Butterfly Hill with a solid philosophy. It was a philosophy that I developed based on lots of research that I had done on play and nature together. And I kind of combined them into one and kind of like molded this philosophy over time. And anybody who came to work at Butterfly Hill had to adhere to those philosophies. It was very like, this is what we are, this is what we aren't. There is not craft projects. We don't do craft projects here. We are a mixed age childcare. So it's 3, 4, and 5-year-olds all together. And there's reasons for that. We allow children to take risks, and there's reasons for that. And you will allow children to take risks if you decide to be an employee or if you decide to be a teacher here. And I think that that is also a really great way to keep teachers also from burning out, because if everybody has like that map of like what we are and what we aren't, it's going to very much help alleviate a lot of conflict among the adults in the room. So back to the question is, if we have teachers with conflicting philosophies, how do we handle that? Okay. So you could try to collaborate and have some shared goals. So like, what are our goals for the children here? Have open conversations. What do we want the children to achieve, and how is that best achieved? So if we can come at it from that angle and like kind of question, what are we doing? Why are, as Lisa Murphy would say, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Who is it for? And run our goals through those 3 questions. Like, we can kind of get to a similar plane, be more on the same page, because we want the same things for children. It's just we have a different map to get there. And so how can we merge our maps to help the children achieve those goals? So we've got to put the children first. What is it that we want them to accomplish here? And what is the best route to accomplish those things? So if we can reframe some of those conversations, like, here's what we know is best for children. Here's what research says is the best way to get there. How can we blend what you like to present to the classroom and what I like to present to the classroom together to kind of get to that shared goal? Okay, so that would be like kind of building a common framework among the teachers and the staff. Okay, another thing that you could do is, if you're a play advocate and you're really wanting to get more play into your spaces, is to volunteer to come up with some professional development. Take that off the plate of admin. Take that off of the plate of the owner, the director, the principal, and say, hey, I would really love to step up and help out with finding some really great professional development for our staff. And you can seek people out. One of the greatest ways to find professional development nowadays is through Instagram or TikTok. Like, you can find people. I mean, that's how a lot of people find me, is through Instagram. A lot of people see me on Instagram and they're like, we need her. And they send me an inquiry, and I get hired a lot from Instagram. So find places for professional development. Host those book clubs. Host an article club. It doesn't even have to be a book. Be like, here's an article. This is what we're going to talk about at the next staff meeting. Take a look at this and see what you think. And we're going to have an open conversation about it. And they might agree and they might not. Okay. Respect other people. Everybody comes from different backgrounds. Everybody's doing the best that they can with the knowledge that they have. A lot of times with play, like, people don't have enough knowledge on play in order to really understand it and implement it. And so, like, give people grace, because people are busy. And usually once people kind of like that light switch flips and they really start to see, like, okay, so what is play and what does it look like? And they really start to like think and ponder, they're going to be on board and start questioning and start learning. Be a leader. Like, take on that leadership role and say, hey, be that Lorax for early childhood education. Be the Lorax and stand up, speak for the children. Okay. Oh, hi, Keon. Okay, here we go. Next question. How can educators manage the challenges of implementing play-based learning in environments not designed for early childhood education, such as buildings with extensive transitions or limited space? So buildings don't have transitions. Teachers have transitions. Classrooms have transitions. So Okay, we kind of covered this one a little bit last night, but I have a few more ideas for you. So if you've got really limited space, try to maximize your existing space. So I have seen like teachers in New York City with small little classrooms utilize the hallway for things. That's not going to be feasible for everybody, but like be creative and think outside the box. My friend Tiffany, who owns a program out in is the founder, it's a nonprofit of a program out in Washington State. Before she owned that program, because it's like it's an amazing program. It's called Play Frontier. Before she was there, she was in a public school. She was teaching preschool in a public school, 4 and 5-year-olds. And they had to share a playground, like the traditional commercial playground with the elementary school kids. But she was creative, and they used to walk across the football field, and there was like this ditch on the other side of the football field on this school road. So it was like a maintenance road. So no traffic was on there. And in the kind of between this football field and this maintenance road was this big ditch. And this ditch had lots of like overgrown bushes in it. And once you kind of like went inside the bushes, it was like this enchanted little forest for children. And that's where they would play. They like made their own tiny little nature playground on the grounds of the school. It was just creative, and they used a space that nobody thought was for children. So she went out there ahead of time and she scouted it out, made sure there was nothing unsafe in there, cleaned it up, like took the plastic bags out that had flown in and had been there for 5 years, cleaned it up so that the children could be in there. And then they brought loose parts out there, and they brought mud kitchen stuff out there, and they brought a water jug out there, and they would haul a wagon out with them. And they would spend their time out in this like drainage ditch that nobody ever thought was a space that children could use. So be creative about the spaces that you use. Like, how can you use your existing spaces to allow children to have more space, right? I think minimizing transitions is key. We talked about this last night too. Transitions are hard. They're hard for me. Like, I don't like doing transitions. They're stressful. You're stopping doing one thing that you really love doing to start another thing, and that can be stressful, and that's stressful for many children. And so if you can minimize the amount of transitions, the better off you're going to be. I also think that creating ways for play to be portable is a way to make spaces more accessible. Like, if you don't have a lot of space. So like I said, Tiffany, they brought a wagon out with them with different materials in that. Like, how can you use a collapsible wagon to put a whole bunch of materials in to take out with you to wherever you go? Or maybe there's a space in your school building that isn't used very often that's bigger. Can you put materials into a wagon, make it portable, and take it wherever you need to go? Children do not need a lot of stuff. They can like make do with cardboard boxes and sticks. So you don't need it to be elaborate to be play. Okay. And you can involve the kids, like have them help set up and take down different play areas if you need to move from one place to another. Okay. All right, here's our last question for the evening. What are some creative solutions for providing large blocks of uninterrupted playtime in schedules that are heavily fragmented by special activities and transitions? This is a pain point for a lot of people. Like, there's like, we have to go here and we have to go there, and then we have to do nap, and then we have to do snack. So I'll just kind of give you a rundown of what Butterfly Hill's schedule was like. And now take this as like, we were a private program, nonprofit, located in a church. We all had the same philosophy. So it's a lot easier to do these things when everybody's kind of under the same philosophy. So children could come from 7:15 to 5:15. That were the hours. Okay. Some children were there only half day. Some were there all day. And just depending on the schedules of work for the kids as at-home caregivers, parents, guardians. So they could come anytime they want, really, because we know that all families are different, right? Work schedules are different. Kids wake up at different times. They go to bed at different times. And so they can come when it works for their family. And we would have a teacher at the door to do the Disney World welcome, is what I called it. It was like, oh my gosh, we've been waiting for you. We can't wait to see you. You had a chance to talk to the parents, guardians, at-home caregivers a little bit. And then that teacher was in charge of morning check-in. And I talked about morning check-in. If you want to know more about morning check-in, you can go to this link. And there's a little video there that kind of talks about what morning check-in is. So that was just like a check for understanding with each child one-on-one, and to check in for the day, to let us know that they were there, and do a little activity with each kiddo. And then they could go play. And the whole entire room is set up. They have access to anything and everything in the room. If it's in the room, they can use it. They can have it. They can do what they want with it, unless it's within reason, as far as like if it's not hurting anyone or anything, it's okay. So they can play. And they spend generally about an hour and a half to 2 hours in play. And this is one of our tricks for keeping play sacred, also honoring the needs of each child, is what we called open snack. So we allowed children, we had one teacher kind of assigned to snack for about an hour. And in our eyes, it wasn't taking the teacher away from like helping children with things, because that teacher is sitting at the table. They're having conversations with children. They're building relationships with those children. They are scaffolding learning. They're saying, okay, you get 30 goldfish crackers. Help me count. Counting with the children. So like snack time is a learning opportunity, and it's a relationship building opportunity. But we didn't force every child to eat the snack at the same time, because we know that everybody wakes up at different times. We know that everybody's biological clock is different. And we know that children can't learn if they are hungry. We also know that if children are in play flow, we don't want to interrupt their play flow to make them have snack. So by having open snack, we're honoring the children and their needs, and also honoring their very sacred playtime. So open snack was about an hour. There was 8 chairs around the teacher table, and children could come and go as they please. They could come and have snack. When a chair is open, if another child was hungry and they saw the chair open, they can then come and have snack. So open snack during free play time. And that just allows children to like, I'm ready for snack and I'm going to go have it. It was beautiful and magical. And I highly suggest it if you can make that work in your classroom. Then we did cleanup time after, sometimes it was 2 hours. They played until 9:15, sometimes it's 10:15. Some of the kids had been playing for 3 hours. It just depends on the weather. We would ring the cleanup bell and say 5 minutes till cleanup time. And knowing that cleanup time is not it's not developmentally appropriate for 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, and they don't enjoy it. How we kind of handle that, like we didn't make children clean up during playtime at all. But if the teachers saw something that was kind of hazardous, or, if nobody was playing with something, we would just like go over and start cleaning it up. Children would sometimes pitch in. We would just clean it up. Like if all the Magna-Tiles were all over the floor and it was a slippery mess, we would just come over and we would start cleaning it up, put it away. Okay. But the big cleanup time, we would ring the cleanup bell, say cleanup time in 5 minutes. Every adult in the room would furiously clean up for those 5 minutes to try to make it not overwhelming for children when it was time to clean up. So we would furiously clean up. 5 minutes would go by. Sometimes it was 8. Sometimes it was maybe even 10. And then we would play a cleanup song if the class could handle that, or sometimes it was quiet and we would clean up all together as a class. That was the most directed time of day that I did at Butterfly Hill. So it was very much like, okay, here's a basket. You put all these horses in the basket. Here's a dress. Go put it on the dress up rack. Here's a purse. Go put this on the shelf. Here's the keyboard. Go put that on the shelf over there. Here's a truck. Go put it over there. Can you clean up all of this paper right here? You're in charge of this paper. So it's very directed like that. We got through it. Then we would do a small group time, and it was a transitional group time. We would split all of the children into developmental levels based on their developmental stage. So because we had 3, 4, and 5-year-olds all in the same classroom, it was kind of like sometimes there was a group of mostly 3-year-olds, young 3s, and then we kind of get into more 4-year-olds, and then we would have more 5-year-olds, but there might be some 4-year-olds in there. It just kind of depended on their development, not necessarily their age. We'd split them up into groups, and then each teacher would do group time. And group time consisted of things that were super developmentally appropriate. It was flannel board stories and puppets and stories and interactive stories and songs and dance and some small games and maybe some journaling, depending on the age of the children. So we would do group time, and then we would like get all of the children to go to the bathroom because we don't have a bathroom outside, and we would dress for outdoor play and then head outside. And anything that we did inside, we could bring outside. So we had babies outside, and we had dress-up clothes sometimes outside, and we would bring baskets of books outside, paint outside, blocks outside. So we would bring a lot of things outside to let children learn outdoors with those things. And we really saw the outdoor classroom as just an extension of the indoor classroom. When it was lunchtime, I would say, everybody meet me on the stage. We had a stage outside, and they would meet me there, and I would read them a story. And then the teachers inside would be getting the lunch bags out on the tables that everybody would go inside, have lunch. Then we did like journaling time or a puzzle time or read books on your cot while everybody's going to the bathroom, finishing up lunch. Rest time, and then as soon as rest time is over, depending on the weather, it was like right back outside until 5:15, and they had just free play outdoors until their parents or guardians came to pick them up. So that is a typical day at Butterfly Hill. But I think that the biggest thing is to try to just really eliminate, and I said this last night too, really eliminate as many things that aren't necessary as possible. You don't need to have 3 group times a day. 1 is plenty. Eliminate some of them. You can utilize like that morning check-in time. If there's something you really need to make sure that the children know, like for example, we taught children how to use real hammers and real nails. And so we would start by letting them hammer nails into a pumpkin. But there was some safety things that we needed to direct teach them about that. So we would do that at morning check-in when they came in. And we would direct teach them, you have to wear safety goggles and like how to tap the nail instead of whack the nail, so that they could like figure out how to use a nail and a hammer. So if there's things that you need to direct teach children how to do, you can utilize the morning check-in for that and then let them go play. Okay. You don't have to have rotational centers as a separate time of day. If you have math centers or reading centers, that can all be put out during uninterrupted free play time, and children they may get to it, they may not. It all depends on their own interests, right? And if you notice that a child is not drawn ever to let's say picking up a pencil and drawing or writing or making any marks of any sort, and they only ever play in the block area with cars, like you can like move the cars over to the easel and see if they will paint with the wheels of the car at the easel. If you want to see like, I wonder if this child who only ever plays with cars, I wonder what numbers they recognize, or if they can put those things together. Make a parking lot out of a piece of tag board or a piece of cardboard, put like numbers on the spaces, and then maybe put like little stickers on the cars that have matching numbers or dots, and see if they can make that connection. Like see if you put that parking lot out there, if they actually make that connection and start parking the cars in the right parking spaces according to their number. So you have to just like be creative and use your own creative mind to help kind of like eliminate some of those things that we don't need, like eliminate some of those rotating senders that we don't necessarily have to have. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Is there any questions? That was kind of the last of our questions that we're covering tonight. If you have any last questions, please put them in the comments and I can address them. While you're thinking, if you're thinking, tomorrow night, we're going to be very much addressing, let me see, I'm going to pull it up here. So we're going to be addressing, like advocating for play, getting people on board again. Oh, nope, that's tonight. Sorry. Oh, here, engaging parents in the community and play-based learning. So how we can like help parents understand more about play-based learning and other people and kindergarten readiness. And I have to get them ready for kindergarten, all of those kinds of things. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow night. There's going to be some overlap, of course, because it's called all interconnected. And tomorrow night, if you show up, I'm going to be giving you something kind of cool. So show up tomorrow night and I have a cool thing for you. And let's see. I was going to see, when am I coming back to Texas? When am I coming back to Texas? I don't think I have anything planned in Texas for a while, if ever, right now on my schedule. I'm going to, where am I headed? Go to a public school in California next week, then family center in New Mexico. I'm doing a conference in Alaska. So if you're here from Alaska, I'm going to be in Fairbanks, Alaska in 2 weeks, doing a conference there. I have, what else do I have? Kansas. I'll be in Kansas. I will be in Maine for a conference in Maine. So if you're in Maine, I'll be there in October. And I think a couple public schools that I'll be at in California at the beginning of October. So not a lot of like open to the public events coming up. So thanks for asking. Becky, maybe you should like try to figure out how to get me back to Texas. Okay. It looks like I don't have any more questions. So I'm going to wrap it up for the evening. I hope to see you all here tomorrow night. And we'll just dive into some more questions. And I look forward to seeing you all then. Thanks for being here. Thanks for showing up for kids. I appreciate each and every one of you. Tomorrow, resources to give parents. Okay. You want resources to give parents? I can maybe dig something up for you. Yeah, maybe I'll surprise you with some things. Okay. All right. So show up tomorrow night and I'll have some goodies for you. Okay. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.